So the next major seal I'm going to replace is the pan gasket seal, the oil pan. If you're wondering what this mess is, in the previous video I mentioned that the crusher washer for this bolt here was missing. This oil filter, whoever put it on here, put it on way too tight, had to wrench it off, and after I got the oil filter off, out came the crush washer, so that's where it was at. So whoever did the last oil change didn't know what they were doing. So for the next step, I'm going to take off this oil pan, and I'm going to leave it like it is, and after I take off the oil pan, I'll flip it upside down, so if there is any debris in the pan, it won't fall back into the engine block. There's going to be a whole bunch of these, and these are 10mm bolts, so I'm just going to zip all these bolts off and take off the oil pan. Alright, so there should be 14 bolts total, and once you have that off the pan's probably going to stay on there. You want to be careful. You can try prying it off, but that might bend and damage the pan. So I usually just smack it off with a hammer. Also make sure your oil dipstick's out of there too when you take off the pan. I'm going to tilt the engine up on its side like this. I'm going to take a putty knife. I'm just going to lightly tap in to break the seal here. Just like that. I'll go to another spot over here and do the same thing. You want to be careful not to bend the oil pan. There we go. All it takes is just a couple little areas to break the seal with the putty knife. You don't have to go all the way around usually. Sometimes you might, depends on your situation. Get a couple of light whacks. Use something that's not going to dent your pan in, of course. Oh man. Some sticky stuff. There we go. And just like that, the pan is out, and hopefully not bent. It shouldn't. Alright, with the oil pan off, next step is of course to clean off this surface, remove all the old gasket material. I'm also going to be replacing the rubber washer that goes in the pan right here, because usually by now this is basically hard plastic and it'll need to be replaced, and it looks like a part of it already broke off, so I'm going to have to find where that piece went. Still lots of oil in here. You're also going to have to clean the surface of the pan, get all this old gasket material off, and it looks like whoever was in here last may have used slightly too much. Check the oil pickup screen and tube, make sure that there's no signs of debris clogging that up. Also inspect the pipe here, because right here these are known to break. These are OEM, of course, but they are known to fail, so inspect it for cracks, weaknesses. Some people recommend replacing them. I'm not going to replace it. It'll just go back in the vehicle. So again, I like these razor blade to scrape off the old gasket material that's stuck on here. Again, careful not to scratch up the surface. It is aluminum, so it is soft. You can see how it just peels off. This old RTV gasket maker, or ultra gray, whatever they used. Just make sure no debris falls into the block here. If it does, the way it's designed, you should be able to clean out anything that falls in there unless it goes deeper into the center of the engine. With the oil pan off, while I'm in here, I'm also going to be taking off this oil pickup tube. There is a rubber O-ring in here I'm going to replace. It's probably also more like a hard plastic instead of rubber. These are 10mm bolts. I'll hold this on. You got two right here. And then there's one more down here on this brace. Give them a quick loose. There we go. Careful not to lose these bolts, otherwise you're going to have fun trying to fish them out. There's a very slight difference in the bolts. I think they're the same length. These two are just regular bolts. The one down here for the bracket has a Phillips screwdriver head. Once you remove those, it should just pop out of here, like so. And the O-ring that we are replacing is right in here, right around that lip. So I just took a small screwdriver to pry that out, and I'm actually surprised because this isn't hard plastic. It still has some rubberness to it. It's a little old. It's been in there a while, but this tells me I wonder if someone's done this job at some point in time, because I've done this before, and usually this is pretty just brittle and hard, like what we saw with the other O-ring on the back of the engine. So now I just got to replace it. Now these bolts have to be torqued down to 7 foot-pounds. And if you're like me who has a inch-pound torque wrench, it'll be 84 inch-pounds. So 7 foot-pounds, or so 7 foot-pounds, which is 84 inch-pounds. And I try to get this as even as possible. So as you tighten this, that O-ring should be squishing down to make a seal. Double check. It's all torqued down. Let me check this one more time. So back to your oil pan, there's also a rubber O-ring that you're going to have to remove. So I just take a small screwdriver, and a piece of it's already missing because it's basically turned into hard plastic. Just gently pry it up, and as you do this it might split. So be careful, because if it loses any pieces into the pan, you'll have to fish those out. Just like that. There we go. As you can see, this is supposed to be rubber. It's basically hard plastic now. So we'll throw that away. Wipe the surface down. Now with that surface wiped down, we can put on the new one, which is right here. You can see that little groove. The other side is smooth. The groove faces upward. It just slides on like so. Make sure it's nice and flat all the way around. And as you put on the pan, it should squeeze anyways. All this is I believe, a tube for oil to return back into the pan. And then with that, make sure to get the surface nice and clean, which is something I've been doing. It's been kind of a pain because a lot of that material likes to stick on there. So I used a brush, Scotch-Brite, cleaner, scrape blades, razor blades. Kind of scratched up the paint, but that's fine. As long as the pan has a nice flat level surface, should be good. But try to get this as clean as possible for the RTV or ultra gray, ultra black. Basically any sealant you use, get ready to get it as clean as possible for that. Also, do not buy gaskets for these pans. They do sell gaskets, cork and rubber. There is no need for them. You only want to use things like ultra black. That's what they're designed for, and that's how they come from the factory. If you put a gasket on here, it's probably going to leak again, and as you torque down the bolts, you can warp the pan, which is going to cause leaks anyway. So just clean the surface, use RTV, ultra black, or your choice of gasket maker. Alright, so make sure the surface is all clean. Then with the pan also all clean, that's the kind of beads you want, about that thick around the entire pan, going along the inside perimeter around the bolt holes. And then I'm using ultra black. With all the bolts on, we now torque it to 3.6 foot-pounds. or 43.2 inch-pounds. I'm just double checking. And that's how you change the O-rings and the Subaru oil pan gasket. Now I'm going to put the oil dipstick tube back in. I cleaned off the interior and the surface a bit. Make sure there's no debris. You have to snake it in between the hose here for the water pump. It should just pop right in there. Like so. Put this cover back on. So I have the oil dipstick in here, but it's kind of loose, so I can manipulate it out of my way. Actually, it's easier to do this with the oil dipstick out. So this part goes behind here, and this sensor has to go through here. And there we go. Everything should line up decently. I have the screw for this right here. Just thread that one in. And then we have two more screws for right here by the cams. So one there, and then one more down here. So bolt here, here, and here. Then with that, I can snake the oil dipstick down in here. And it has to go underneath that one hose. And then we connect it back into the oil pan. Then with the oil dipstick connected to the oil pan, you then put this bracket onto this bolt here on the head, and then you can snug that down and torque it down. Another thing, when you're putting this cover back on, make sure this little gasket around the cams is nice and flush. When I was putting it in, this one kept wanting to stick out, so I had to work it a bit, but eventually got it to be the way it needs to be. Alright, now for the cover on this side, it's easy because we don't have to deal with an oil dipstick. And you're going to have a total of 5 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 2 of them on my cover are broken. So this one's broken here for me, and then obviously this one. I could re-glue it, but for the most part it's not necessary. I still have the broken plastic piece here, so I just fit it in and that'll help hold it. Actually, it's not perfect, but I can use plastic glue to re-glue these. And then all that's left, of course, is to torque these down. If you don't want to guess, you can use a torque wrench. So the manual says to torque these timing cover bolts to 36 to 48 inch-pounds. So anywhere in there is fine. I'm going to do 36 inch-pounds to show you. Done. Very minute. I did 36 just to be on the low end. You want to break these? And there we go.